Well, hello and welcome to Bible class. Glad that you're with us. We just finished a book that we have been reading from Ben Giselbach, and we're ready to start a new class. And I thought we'd go back to our roots a little bit of what I like to typically do in a class setting, which is cover a book of the Bible. And so we're going to be doing an introduction of First Thessalonians over the next couple of classes, and we'll be doing Second Thessalonians after that. I've decided we'll do First Thessalonians as our Sunday and Wednesday class. So we'll start the introduction tonight. We'll pick up again on Sunday and keep going, and then we'll move into Second Thessalonians next. Today we're going to talk about who was the writer of First Thessalonians, and that is Paul. Now, First Thessalonians is a letter about hope in the face of persecution. A letter about hope in the face of persecution. Now, who was Paul? Well, his name, the first thing we want to talk about, we can say that his name was Paul and it was also Saul, Acts 13 and verse 9. Saul means demanded, lent, ditch, or death, according to Hitchcock. It means asked for, according to Easton. It means desired, according to Smith. And it means, uh, in Hebrew, I should say, little or small, according to Hitchcock, and is a form of a Latin word that means little, by degrees, gradually, a small amount at a time, or bit by bit. He would later go by Paul, as that would be more acceptable to the Gentile audience that we know he would be ministering to as an apostle. His background, he is a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin, Romans 11:1, Philippians 3:5, and 2 Corinthians 11:22, where he says, Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they the seed of Abraham? So am I. He's from the city of Tarshish. It's a no mean city. Acts 9 and verse 11, it says, Arise and go to the street called Straight, and inquire at the house of Judas for one Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he is praying. And he says that in verse 39 of Acts 21, Paul says he's a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of a no mean city. And I implore you, permit me to speak to the people. And again, he repeats basically the same thing in Acts 22 and verse 3. Is not an average city. It's above average as far as education and finances are concerned. And we know Paul is a Roman citizen. Acts 16 and verse 37, Paul said to them, They have beaten us openly, uncondemned Romans, and have thrown us into prison. And now do they put us out secretly? No, indeed. Let them come themselves and get us out. And as they bound him, verse 25 of Acts 22, Paul said to the centurion who stood by, Is it lawful for you to scourge a man who is a Roman and uncondemned? He was educated in Jerusalem by Gamaliel. Acts 22 and verse 3 says, I indeed am a Jew, born of Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in the city at the feet of Gamaliel, taught according to the strictness of our father's law, and was zealous toward God as you all are today. It also says in Acts 5 and verse 34 through 40, where Gamaliel is talking about this idea of if it's of God, you can't overthrow it. And if it isn't of God, then it won't work anyway. And so really we should just leave this alone. And that's where Gamaliel is standing up among these men, and he's trying to get people to see the importance of just kind of backing off. Let this run its course. If it's effective, it will be effective. If it's not effective, it won't work. Let's talk a little bit about his religious background. Like we mentioned, he's a Hebrew of the Hebrews. Philippians 3:5, he was circumcised the eighth day of the stock of Israel, tribe of Benjamin. Hebrew of the Hebrews concerning the law, a Pharisee. Now he is a Pharisee as well. Acts 23 and verse 6, when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried aloud in the council, Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Concerning the hope and resurrection of the dead, I am being judged. He was known to his countrymen. Acts chapter 9 and verse 21, those who heard were amazed and said, Is this not he who destroyed those who called on this name in Jerusalem and has come here for that purpose, so that he might bring them bound to the chief priests? And Acts 26 and verse 4 says, My manner of life from my youth, which was spent from the beginning among my own nation at Jerusalem, all the Jews know. Paul was a well-known individual. Now, he had zealously followed the Jews' traditions. In Galatians 1 and verse 14, he advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous for the traditions of my father. He was a persecutor of the church, and he was present at the stoning of Stephen, Acts 9, 3 through 20, Acts 22, 4 through 16, Acts 22, 20, Acts 8, 3, Acts 9, verses 1 through 2, and Acts 22 and verse 4 as well. He was a persecutor of the church. But then he's baptized. He becomes a Christian. And after baptism, what happens? Well, we know he's baptized by Ananias after having seen Jesus on the road to Damascus. And that's Acts 9, 3 through 20, 22, 4 through 16, and 26, 9 through 16. And he's not appreciated by his countrymen after his conversion. And that really shouldn't be a surprise to us, because Paul starts to preach and teach Jesus as the Christ, the Son of the living God. And his countrymen don't appreciate that. In verse 18 and 19 of Acts 22, he saw him saying to me, "Make haste and get out of Jerusalem quickly, for they will not receive your testimony concerning me." And so I said, "Lord, they know that in every synagogue I imprisoned and beat those who believe on you." Acts 9, 23 and 24 says, "Now after many days were passed, the Jews plotted to kill him, their own person, someone they all well knew. But their plot became known to Saul, and he watched the gates day and night, or they watched the gates day and night to kill him." He goes to Arabia for 3 years, Galatians 1, 17 and 18, that he didn't go to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before him, but he went to Arabia and then returned again to Damascus. And then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter, who remained with him 15 days. And he's called this an apostle out of season. 1 Corinthians 9, 1, 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 8, he says in that passage that he was born out of due time. And he was an apostle to the Gentiles. Acts 22, 21, Acts 26, 16, or 17 and 18, Romans 11, 13, Romans 15, 15 through 20. And we're going to end talking about his qualities. Let's talk about his qualities a little bit. He's a meek man. He says, "Now I, Paul," 2 Corinthians 10, 1, "am myself am pleading with you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, who in presence and am lowly among you, but being absent am bold toward you." He was able to answer detractors. In verse 10 of the same chapter of 2 Corinthians 10, "For his letters, they say, are weighty and powerful, but his bodily presence is weak and his speech contemptible." Verse 6 of chapter 11 says, "Even though I am untrained in speech, yet I am not in knowledge, but we have been thoroughly manifested among you in all things." He's a man that suffered many trials. 2 Corinthians 11, 23 through 28. He had a thorn in the flesh, 2 Corinthians 12, 7 and 9, and Galatians 4, 13 and 14. We're not really sure what it was specifically. We just know that he struggled with some type of thorn in the flesh. And he died in Rome, apparently beheaded by Nero in AD 66, according to Easton, or 67, according to ISBE Smith, or 68 in Smith. So it's safe to say he died between AD 66 and 68. Paul is an individual that is incredibly, just very impressive to study the life of. And this book is going to be no different. A man who was persecuted greatly, writing to those who are going to be facing persecution. And so we're going to get into the history of Paul and Saul next week. Why is his name different? Why does it change? And we'll move on in our study of the introduction on Sunday, actually, I should say. But until then, I want to thank you for studying with us for this brief moment, and we'll see you again on Sunday, Lord willing.